Certainly a lot of excitement about the adoption of electric vehicles, but we're seeing slowing demand. That's bringing up certain conversations about the hurdles of the transition. Let's bring in Tom Narayan, RBC Capital Markets Global Autos lead equity analyst. Tom, it feels like a bit of an echo when you think about these earnings calls, what we've been hearing from EV makers. There is a slowdown that's happening. You have the delay in the EV plants for GM. You've got the commentary coming out of Rivian as well as Lucid. What are you seeing in terms of the shift?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely happening. There's no doubt about it now, right? I mean, it's very few exceptions. The only ones that have had exceptions are the ones that are not being aggressive with electrification. So I think what's happening is early adopters largely have already bought their EVs, right? You had 3 years of stimulus during the pandemic, low interest rates. Everybody gobbled up these cars and they were very expensive. These are folks who live in the suburbs, who already had an ICE car, right? And they didn't worry about range anxiety. Now you're hitting the mainstream America, let's say. These folks don't really know a lot about EVs. They don't have the luxury of having an ICE, and they do care about range anxiety. And then, oh, that's right, these cars are very expensive. And interest rates are not low anymore, right? We heard what Elon said on the Tesla call. So it's really an affordability issue. Early adopters are gone. That's affecting the entire group. We saw, obviously, Rivian and Lucid, no exceptions yesterday. So this is definitely taking the whole sector by storm. It's probably not going to go away anytime soon.
And Tom, what does change it, though? What's the catalyst to get demand stronger, moving in the right direction again?
I think pricing needs to fall. And by the way, I think pricing will fall. It's just, it's a prisoner's dilemma, right? Car companies need to produce as many cars as possible for plant optimization, and all it takes is one or two of these guys to chop pricing and everybody else has to follow suit. So this pricing will come down. The problem is they can't come down too much because then they become really unaffordable. So, but it really has to do with pricing coming down. Charging infrastructure needs to get built, but it is. Consumers need to get educated. The fact that charging infrastructure isn't really that big of a problem, but this takes time, right? A lot of the early adopters, they already understood about how EVs work. A lot of folks now simply don't know. So it's a lot of education. Your neighbor needs to get an EV, and then you see it and figure out that you want one as well. So I would say it's really pricing needs to come down. People need to get educated, but it'll happen, right? And let's not forget, the government is pouring in a lot of capital in the form of the IRA. Now, it's going to take a while for these battery facilities to get built in the U.S., but eventually this will happen, and that will entice folks to buy these vehicles.
Yeah, Tom, what good news if you're in the EV space was some data we got out of China seeing the largest increase in terms of car sales in 5 months. Roughly 40% of that was electric vehicles. So we're talking about the largest EV market there. But a lot of that was on the back of promotions. And I know last time we talked, you said that the slashing prices isn't necessarily a big concern if that ups the unit these companies sell. Is that still how you see it? How do you think investors should be looking at that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think price cutting is definitely gonna have to happen. It's the only way to entice some of these consumers to buy these cars. We saw what happened in Germany when the subsidy got taken off in early September, and then all of a sudden you saw a hit in October with sales. So consumers at this point, we're starting to get to the kind of mainstream EVs. No more, we're not at the $80,000, $70,000 ones anymore. Now we're buying the kind of mainstream middle market EVs where pricing is very important, affordability is important. So I do think you're going to have to see some price cutting to get there. But as I said before, there's a limit on how much you can cut price, because then these things start getting really margin dilutive for the car company because the battery pricing. But in time, battery pricing should come down. That should start to help solve some of this issue. But no doubt, make no mistake, pricing is going to come down. I think it'll come down as quick as next year.
Tom, you mentioned range anxiety. That's certainly been one that has been continued to be kind of a hurdle in terms of EV adoption. When you think about who's in that space right now, you put Tesla aside because they do have the most reliable network. How quickly can DC fast chargers or more of these fast chargers be deployed if that's in fact the catalyst to get the next group of potential EV owners on board?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to take time. There's no doubt about it. It's interesting, actually. If you look at the vehicle density of charging point relative to the EVs on the road, there's still not a lot of EVs on the road. It's actually higher density than it is for petrol pump to ICE car. But I think people just don't realize it, right? So a lot of consumers going to the dealerships are like, I don't see any charging points. Where are they? So it's a lot of education. The other thing is Tesla has the best locations, right? So these OEMs choosing Tesla's supercharger network was a big step. Now almost everybody has, right? So that should actually help with consumers now when they go and they buy a non-Tesla EV, they at least have the comfort in knowing that they can buy one and use that charging infrastructure. So look, it still needs to get built out better, apartment complexes, shopping complexes, offices, all of that stuff needs to get better. But I don't think the charging infrastructure is as big of a hurdle as people think it is. The other thing is consumers need to learn how to use their EVs better. You don't really need 300 miles of range every day. Most people just go to the grocery store, drop their kids off at school. You only need 50 miles or whatever. And it's an educational thing. People just need to learn how to use the car and get over this range anxiety. But, that's a consumer habit that will take a long time to break. And I just don't see that happening immediately overnight.
Tom Narayan from RBC. Tom, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate the insight.
Got it.